Hey, Amy, today we've got a great conversation with Vanessa Alanis from Black Dog Wealth. She's both a financial planner, recently launched her business, and also a military spouse who's gone through the military retirement transition just about 2 years ago. And so it's a great conversation.
I agree. Fantastic. Like nothing we've done before. So we have the spouse perspective on things, but not, being a military spouse, that knowledge and experience is valuable enough, but she's also a financial planner. So she comes at it with sort of the mind of a financial planner. Um, I really loved how she, dug into the emotional piece of transition. We don't always like to talk about that, but it's important. And she hit five really good key takeaways near the end. So hopefully people will stick around for that. I'm looking forward to listeners getting a chance to hear.
Welcome to Operation Retirement Readiness, where Amy and Mike, two certified financial planners, talk about how military members can prepare for transition and how veterans can prepare for ultimate retirement. This podcast represents the views of the hosts and any guest. It is for informational purposes only and should not be considered tax, financial, or legal advice. All information is regarded to be from reliable sources. The hosts are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast. This podcast is not intended to replace professional advice.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining today. As we said, today we've got Vanessa Alanis, a military spouse and fellow financial planner today on the podcast. And we're just excited to talk about, the transition piece from the spouse side of the ledger. Amy and I were both the military members, so sometimes we probably overlook, what the spouse is going through. So Vanessa, so great to have you on today and just looking to talk about, what that experience like, both in the military, the transition. So you mind just giving us a little bit of your background and story?
Sure. Thank you guys so much for having me today. It is an honor to be on your podcast. Um, so, a little bit about myself is I am a military spouse. My husband served in the Marine Corps for 33 years. Um, and prior to him getting out to about 2 years ago, that was like my entire adult life had been tied up in active duty Marine Corps, as had his. I we went through that. We have three children that we've raised throughout this whole process. I've worked as a financial professional and did a couple other things throughout his career. He now retired. We live in Northern Virginia, and he is having a second career while I am. I started my own business last year after he retired, so that was pretty exciting. And I have to say, talking about retirement and having this space to kind of review what the past 2 years have been like has been really cathartic because it's actually really intense retiring and going through that transition. And this gave me the chance to kind of like review actually what I thought went well and what didn't go well. So thank you for the opportunity.
I'm super excited to have you and to talk with you because, like Mike said, we didn't experience transition from our spouse's point of view. We didn't experience our career from the spouse point of view. And I think it's even more important, especially from the financial planning perspective. So I love that you're not just a military spouse who spent your entire adult life, following your husband's career, but you are also now a financial planner. So I think you have some really good insight to share with our audience about, what to think about, what you did think about, what you wish you thought about, and that kind of stuff. Um, to jump in, you said that the whole process is really intense. When you think back on it, like what was it like from your perspective, watching your spouse go through this transition and the transition for yourself? So how do I mean, that's a big question, right? So it might take a while, but
Yes.
just, from both perspectives, but sort of the way you saw it for him. We've heard
Oh,
lots
wow.
about the process for ourselves, but like, how did you see it for him and how did you experience it for yourself?
I feel like we should be sitting in a circle while discussing this, maybe holding hands. Um, it so it it was so much more overwhelming for both of us, like as this process unfolded. And you you know it's coming, right? Like everybody knows the ride ends at some point, whether you choose to jump off it or the military says like it's time for you to leave our ride. But and so you, but you're so busy surviving it that you may not understand like what that transition means. And as I said, our entire adult lives were wrapped up in the needs of the Marine Corps, for lack of a better word. And this is not financial in nature, but like really the hardest parts of our whole transition were the identity loss, the creating a new community, um, the evaluate, like, to be clear, we're also all transitioning like in midlife. So the passage of time, you're having my mortality. What have I done? What do I want to do? Like all of that hit us in a way that we would not have thought. Like, um, oh, this is not just a job. I'm not just leaving a job. Like you are leaving a community, you're leaving your identity. So it was a lot. And watching both of us go through that in different ways, because I don't think the emotional part of transition is really identified. Like we talk about the financial part, we talk about needing a job, but the really hard part is the emotions and getting support for those and figuring out what that looks like. So at a high level, that is what my review of our transition looked like. It was really intense, and we had like in a 12-month period, we had my husband retire, start a new job, one kid graduate high school and start college, one kid graduate college and start an additional educational opportunity. We moved twice, once ourselves, remembered why we never chose to do that when we were active. And then the second move, we actually purchased a house. And that 12-month period just felt like try to keep your head above water, right? Like, what can we do to stay sane and keep, forward momentum in our lives? It does calm down. It does get better. And now, like 2 years post retirement, I'm like, okay, things are looking good. That's all of it that's a long story long.
I mean,
No,
I think
that's great.
yeah, and I think it's so useful to bring out the emotional piece of it. So yeah, thank you for that.
Now, did you guys know what, I mean, how far out did you kind of know this is what we want to do next, or was that still being, worked out as you were, getting real close to retirement?
Oh, it's still being worked out real close to retirement. So retirement had been on our horizon for a few years, and like our duty station before our last duty station was California, and we gave it some serious consideration there, because my husband was a California resident, and they have a lot of great benefits for education, and we kind of toyed with that idea there. But we then were like, oh, the ride's not over, and so we moved across the country back to Virginia, and it was there. Like we knew it was coming, and we even knew we were going to do it like um, probably when my middle son graduated high school, because it gave us a natural breaking point from the community we were in to launch somewhere else. But as far as like what I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I was ultimately going to move into hopefully having my own business. So that was a little clear. But as far as what my husband wanted to do, it was very unclear, because for the first time in his life, like he had his own choices to make. And that is both a blessing and a curse, right? It can be incredibly overwhelming. And I see this in my boys that are in school right now. Like the world is their oyster. You can do anything, but when you can do anything, you can be frozen with indecision because you're like, well, I don't know what that means for me. And what does the best look like for me? What do I really like? And honestly, there was a period of time we were both wishing the Marine Corps would just tell us what we liked as they
Yeah.
had told us where we should move. We're just like, if you could just tell me like where the best place to live is. And so we were really figuring that out. Like my husband he did the, it's failing me right now, the internship.
Gilbridge?
Yes,
Skillbridge.
he did SkillBridge
Yep.
to kind of
Yep.
explore paths. And he participated in many of your previous guests' veteran organizations. My husband was doing all of it, networking, trying to learn, being a sponge, absorbing, getting experiences, etc., to try to really figure out. And on a note about this, as to make another long story long, he found a community. He got a job in tech post retirement, which kind of aligned with what he did in the Marine Corps. So that was like a nice thing. And he thought, with what he knew about himself at retirement, that that was the fit for him. We're now 2 years from that, and he has pivoted. And I see this happening in a lot of our peers that are in the same group. Like, you really need more space to identify who you are. And these past 2 years of him being retired gave him space to be like, oh, well, I thought I liked this, but I actually like this. And so when he was able to get his second post-retirement job, it is actually like a better fit because now he knows himself better.
Yeah, that's I mean that's super common for folks that they take that first job and it's I think the stats are less than 2 years for most
Mm-hmm.
people in their first job out of the military or military retirement. So yeah, not uncommon just because again especially at retirement, 33 years, you don't know anything else on the outside, so it's all a guessing game. And yeah, I see that, with a lot of clients also that, hey, it, it's, it's probably not going to be that second, oh, I'm going to stay for another 20 type thing, with the
Mm-hmm.
same company that I transitioned into. So yeah, that's great.
So I mean, I love that you're talking so much about the emotional piece because we probably haven't, kind of focused
Yeah.
on the financial piece. And I hope, for listeners, I hope that, this makes you feel kind of normal. Like it is the least normal thing ever, but all of us who go through it, we probably all have very similar feelings. It's the uncertainty. It's, the first time of being overwhelmed by a decision. Like the way you said it was perfect. When you can do anything, sometimes that's just too overwhelming. So I love that. Turning a little bit more, because this is a financial planning podcast,
Yeah,
turning a
no
little
problem.
bit more towards like, because the emotions are there. Like you probably are not like, I don't know, maybe there's a therapist out there who specializes on getting people through the emotional piece. I don't know. Maybe we need to find somebody to bring on the podcast. Um, but when you're experiencing that level of emotion,
Mm-hmm.
never mind the financial piece. To me, that just says that the financial piece is so much more important to have more time with because you're not going to be your best self every single day. So making a decision at the last minute when there's a very good chance you're not your best self is probably not the right thing. So what do you think now that you've experienced transition and you're a financial planner and you're running your own firm, so you're serving clients too, like what do you think are the most important aspects of the financial piece of things, and how far out should people be thinking about having real conversations?
So this was, I love this question because this gave me a chance to really look back at what we did and what we executed well and what we didn't and why. So obviously, I hope people are having financial conversations throughout their entire service time. Like it's best to start early and often. And everybody doesn't have to be executing at the same time, but everybody needs to like understand the plan. Um, and as far as like talking about transition and what that means, again, a few years prior to it is a great time to talk about it. And the biggest thing is like, where are we going to live? Why are we going to live there? What does this mean for us? Like start working that. If you're working with a professional, it's amazing because they can like help you run numbers in ways that your mental math might not be able to like keep track of. So I think it's great to start the conversation early, understand your cash flow. And this is something I feel like we did well in our transition. Um, my history before I became a CFP was I was an accredited financial counselor, or I still am an accredited financial counselor. So like day-to-day cash flow management is my jam. We love it. We love Excel. We have tables. It's all the things. But So paying attention to your cash flow and understanding it is important. I also think it's great to have that emergency fund and start building it, because you may need a runway to create a large enough cushion for the transition. I always think we should keep our expectations low when it comes to transition type things, because inevitably something happens. Pay gets messed up. Your kids get kicked out of Deers, and you're like, how did they get kicked out of Deers? They've been there the whole time. So I think it's wise to start building up that savings cushion early. So another, I feel like we did that kind of well. Another thing that I think families should start talking about early and often is the life insurance SBP conversation that's going to come up. And I know that in my spouse Facebook circles, SBP gets like a bad name. It's like a 4-letter word, but 3. And I think learning about that and understanding how that fits in or doesn't fit into your financial plan, and the earlier you can get that information, the more time you have to choose what option you'd like to do. Understanding your TSP and what happens with that. I felt like we were knowledgeable about that. I was really surprised actually at transition how many solicitations my husband received on LinkedIn and in the mail with all kinds of like scary things about why he needs to take his TSP balance and do something else with it. So I was really glad like we were informed and knew what the right choice was for our family in that capacity. So those are things that I think families should talk about early. And gosh, if you're not talking about it the whole way through, definitely like maybe 2 to 3 years before the actual transition happens. Other things you should talk about, and like things that we did not necessarily execute well, would be everybody hears about taxes in retirement. When I retire, my taxes are going to go up. It's going to be so bad, taxes. And we planned for taxes increasing. And in fact, the first year my husband was out, we sat down and went to the IRS calculator and we put in my pay and his retirement pay and the bonus he was going to get. And we like computed his taxes and we adjusted our withholdings. I was like patting myself on the back, like, this is how you don't get burned with a tax bill, right? And then the rest of the year unfolded. And this was that year where, again, we moved multiple times and children were graduating and it was all the things all at once. And we sold a house. I mean, I'm sorry, we didn't sell a house. We sold some investments to buy a house. And I just kind of like mental mathed some of that in my head. I would never recommend that to a client and I would never do that to a client. But in my head, I was like, it's a rounding error. I'm sure we're fine. And then my husband had some stocks that vested. And I, again, just kind of did some mental math on that. Like, I'm tracking that. We have some money in savings. It'll be fine. Anyway, tax time came around and we owed multiple times the amount I had mental math for our family. And so I feel like that was definitely a place where I dropped the ball. It's easy to do when you're just trying to survive, but families should definitely understand there is a tax impact. And if you roll into a new job that may have all kinds of different pay you've never been exposed to before, like RSUs and things like that, it is really imperative to take the time to understand them and not mental math them. Again, long. Another thing that was interesting to me that I had not thought of in its important discussion was health insurance. So all throughout my adult life, we've been TRICARE, largely Prime. And so I very rarely ever faced management of my health insurance. I just did what Prime told me to do. So my husband's new employer offered their own health insurance for free. And so we decided we were going to have them as our primary and TRICARE as our secondary. And never in my life have I ever had 2 insurances to juggle like this. And I really was not paying attention to what it meant to layer insurance coverage over time. And I went to a doctor that took TRICARE that I'd seen previously and was very surprised when I ended up getting a bill because lo and behold, they didn't take my primary insurance, which it blew my mind that somebody would take TRICARE but not take this other insurance, but they exist. And when you are layering insurance like that, if your primary does not pay, then your secondary doesn't. And so I received a bill that I was not expecting for that. And that, again, this is all in that 12-month period where I was like, I need to pay attention to how these things work. So that is something that can probably be handled like closer to transition, like when you're reviewing what your options are and what you might want to do. But these are complications and just different things that when we are active duty may not occur to us. And then once you kind of cross the wire, they become parts of your life. And so it's important to like learn more about them.
Yeah, the healthcare insurance, and this comes up sometimes with other kinds of folks. So I work with federal employees too. So sometimes there's layering there. And the bottom line is, if the two insurances don't know about each other, they both deny it. Which you wouldn't think. Like you'd think somebody would pick it up, but nope, they just both deny it. So,
Yeah, I was overwhelmed with the amount of paperwork that comes with layering insurances. But I made an Excel spreadsheet and got on top of it after that.
Good deal. Yeah. So, one of the things you mentioned early on was, hey, the Marine Corps was telling you where to go for, your whole adult life. How did the discussions evolve as you were retiring about, you were starting the business, your husband was gonna, look for some other job. How did you balance that discussion of, okay, whose career maybe taking priority, or how did you look at that during the transition, and how have you seen clients, maybe look at similar decisions?
Um, well, obviously, like open communication is great, and I would say this is still something we balance um, as um, as my business continues to grow and he evaluates like where he feels in his life. But I have absolutely seen situations where the spouse maybe is going to become the primary, and the service member, it's a decision that they're going to step back, and they may work, but they like understand that they're picking a job that maybe has less responsibility, maybe less pay, because I hear often like they're done with decision making, they're done maybe with leadership. They just want to like have a job where they can just do the work. And with the idea that maybe extra focus will happen around supporting the spouse as they continue to grow in whatever capacity that their business is going or career should grow in. And I would say we had conversations about that. Ours, it changed. We just talked a few minutes ago about how service members go like 18 to 24 months in that first job, and what we thought might be like, if you base the long term on what experience you had in the 18 to 24 months, it's probably going to need to adjust. And I would say my husband's first job was completely from home, no office. Also, really big deal because like he always worked outside the home, and now he's like always at home. Um, and so we made a lifestyle that went around that, but then his new job takes him back out of the house. So we had like pivot again. Like, what does this look like to support my business and my career as you take on this other job outside the house? So I would just say communication and being flexible, and honest with really what you want to do. Don't If you have further career goals, either one of you, make sure they're clear to the other person. And so that's the emotional level, right? And then ultimately, like financially, we need to make sure that we are looking at all this, like, what are the implications in the lifestyle we're trying to create? Should one of us step back and one of us stand up? Is there an income loss that is insurmountable? Is it doable based off of like the pension and any disability we get, et cetera?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's a big, ongoing discussion, decision piece that it changes, and yeah, it's interesting as you see that kind of play out over time. So
well, and I think it's important to have that discussion many times and all the way till the end, because as you start out your career, I've heard on more than one occasion where you get started in a career, it's early, you don't really know if you're going to stay in, right? Sometimes
hmm
you have there's decisions to make along the way, and maybe earlier in the career the plan was always to, okay, the service member have their career, and then you get your career, like, and that becomes
hmm
like the assumption. But if there's no discussion about that near the end, maybe the service members changed their mind, maybe the spouses changed their mind. So it's just important to have that discussion the whole way through. So there's no, assumption that something that you talked about 3 years ago still is in place.
Absolutely, because you're both still growing and changing as people. And um, so 100%, I would say our thing has been my husband thought, oh, I don't mind stepping back slightly. And then he realized, well, I actually really like to be challenged and grow in my job. And so now we're like trying to meet that in the middle for both of us. But yeah, honest communication, ongoing is probably the answer for that one.
Yeah. So, couple questions together for you. For spouses who are either, because you've no doubt given up something throughout your husband's career in terms of your own career. So what advice would you give spouses who are, looking to rebuild their career, start their career, start a business as they approach retirement, and where would you point them for resources?
Okay. My advice to them. Be patient with yourself, give yourself grace, and also understand that sometimes, and I love this expression, like we build the airplane as we're flying it. So we may not have all the answers, all the directions, but we can start on a path and then kind of pull it together. This kind of goes for financial planning as well, right? Like we work with clients, we kind of like set the path and then we're like course correcting the whole way as we go on because life is happening around us. Um, as far as resources, like there is a community. The military community is amazing. The service member and the spouse community. Like if you are interested in doing something, network. Surely enough, within 4 or 5 people, you'll find somebody that is doing kind of similar to what you want to do, and you can learn about it. And people love to share to bring somebody else up with them, especially in this community. Like everybody would love to lift up others. And I was thinking at my last duty station, there was like 4 or 5 of us together that were all trying to start something at the same time. And we made this our own little group, and we met maybe quarterly, where we were, and every business was different. There was everything from like embroidery to music to like financial planning. And we had like a business discussion group trying to raise each other up and figure this out. As networking, I kind of is building onto this, but networking in also regards to your industry. If you think you know what you want to do, I love conferences, big fan. And not just for educational content, but for the people you can meet, because that is truly where these connections that can be really impactful happen. So if you like photography or you like financial planning or you like IT, find a conference and attend. There's also tons of transition groups that help spouses. You had a previous podcast guest, Alan Nelson, talk about a bunch of things that were available for veterans, but many of those same things have spouse organizations that like they'll support spouses as well. When my husband went through transition, as I said earlier, we thought we were getting out in California. So I actually went to Vet CTAP in San Diego. And it was amazing. And then when we moved over here, I participated in the Commit Foundation's program for spouses as well. And that is just there's so many, this can honestly be a little bit overwhelming as you're starting, but they're out there. The Small Business Association has like support for spouses trying to start things out. So it will probably not be that you can't find resources and you can't network. It'll probably be that once you peel back this layer, you're going to find like all these resources and all this networking, and it may be overwhelming. But that's okay, where I want you to have like grace and peace for yourself. Like you can learn it at small bits. Not everything has to happen at once. And you have more value than you think you do. A lot of us leave the active duty military lifestyle and question, like, do I have value anymore? Because I've been supporting this, because my career is broken, because I have all of this. And you have a lot of value. You have a lot of skills that if you work with some professionals that help with resumes that you didn't like realize, if you put those skills to those words, you're like, I didn't realize that was a skill. I thought that was just life. So you have a ton of opportunity ahead of you. It's not too late, and take a chance on yourself.
I love that. So we all run our own firms, right? And I have a couple military spouses, and I specifically wanted to team up with military spouses because what I have learned in working with so many clients, interacting with the broader military community, is that service members figure things out. Military spouses figure things out at a whole different level. There is definitely not a problem they can't solve. They've done it on their own. They've raised kids on their own. They've done things always like, last second. They're getting kids through school changes, and there's basically nothing you can throw at a military spouse that throws them off kilter. So I love that you said that.
So, Amy, any other big topics you want to hit before we kind of wrap up? I think we hit.
No, I mean, not no other big topics, but we never did hit sort of your path. So we talked about your husband's path, but let's talk about your path that brought you to starting your firm.
Oh, no, okay. Long story long again. So childhood. But then I'll say that I was actually in ROTC in college, and I thought I was going to get a commission in the Navy. Life didn't turn out like that, but I ended up marrying a Marine and going down this path. And I hit our first duty station as a couple. I was ripped away from everything I knew. We're at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, which at that time was like the just not my favorite place, right? And I was alone. I had an infant. He was working like 27 hours of every 24 hours a day. And a friend of mine, actually, who was in San Diego, started volunteering with the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society. And she said, "Hey, I think you would probably like to do this out where you were." And so I won't lie, the thing that originally drew me to the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society was free childcare, and they reimbursed mileage because we had like $0 to go towards anything at that time in our life. And I got in there, and for those that aren't familiar with the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society, they're an emergency relief society designed to help service members and their families through crises. And that crises can be anything from like disaster relief to predatory practices, and they're behind on something. And back when I started at Navy Relief, they also had like a budget counselor on staff who provided like financial education in there. And I started out as a caseworker, and it really just opened my eyes to the power of financial education early in somebody's life and the impact of not understanding finances and how that could play out as well. So I cut my teeth there and did many different positions with Navy Relief over the course of years. But I always came back to loving the financial education and working with people on their own kind of money to understand the power of that. I dabbled in a government position for a few years when we lived overseas, but then I came back and decided this is what I wanted to do, and I became a personal financial counselor on a contract back at Camp Lejeune again. Couldn't shake that place. It was funny, like before I moved there, I was like, I'm never moving there, and then we lived there 3 times. And I loved what I did. I loved working with service members. I loved sharing information that I thought could be truly helpful for them and have an impact on their life. But as I kept doing that, I realized there were things like foundational finance is amazing, but there is finance that extends beyond. And I wanted to be able to speak to that and guide that, because I didn't want predatory practice people out there kind of taking advantage of what service members didn't know at that level. And so I went back to school and I became a chartered financial consultant, ultimately became a CFP, and along this way was continuing to work, but finding like I would love to have a private practice, being able to serve clients how I wanted to serve them. So I did government contracting. I worked with another practitioner for a few years. Great thing there. And then as my husband's transition came, we knew like, okay, it's time to pivot and take a chance on myself. I started Black Dog Wealth, which is almost on its first anniversary. The black dog in question is named Bandit. For obvious reasons, Bandit Wealth didn't really work. So it's amazing how much people think Black Dog feels better. And I serve military and government professionals. I also have a large female community, and anybody who loves dogs are drawn to him. And he is both the mascot and the storyline of the business. Because as fate would have it, as I started my business, my dog ran into a myriad of health issues. And at a period of time, I thought I was just going to have a torso that kept eating. So my clients and stuff have followed along as on his journey, which has provided lots of discussion about finances because we talk about the importance of emergency funds. We review the potential importance of pet insurance, um, and um, and then caring for your body, health and wealth, right? Like, what does that mean long term? So that is my story in a nutshell of how I came to do what I'm doing.
And along the lines of the dog story, what kind of dog is Bandit?
An expensive one. Um, he is like a mutt.
Okay.
He definitely looks like a black lab, so has some of that in him. He was a rescue.
Okay.
But I call him my pound puppy with a pedigree price, due to all of his extensive health issues. Um, and yeah, funny, and we could funny story about this. We got him. He was only 8 months old, and he was only like 25 or 30 pounds, and my husband was like, "Oh yeah, he'll be like a good mid-sized dog. Like that'll be like a 50-pound dog. He'll be wonderful. He'll do like mid-sized dog things, right? Like he's a sedan or something." Um, he now is like 85 pounds. He like didn't stop growing. It's like Clifford with all the love. And So yeah, he's our small dog.
Yeah.
Our 85-pound dog.
That's awesome.
That makes me feel a little better because ours was supposed to be in the 35 to 40 range because mom and dad were both under 40 pounds and he's 55. And so, yeah, I fully feel that. But yeah, glad ours stopped growing and didn't go to the 85 piece because, yeah.
I remember walking our little puppy in front of a neighbor, and she said, "What kind of dog is he?" And I said, "I don't know. He's a rescue." And I said, "But the rescue said he'd be about 55-ish pounds." And she started laughing. She was like, "Wah ha ha." She's like, "Vanessa, look at the paws on that dog." She's like, "He's not going to be 55 pounds." And it turns out she was right. So, good to know for future. Uh, and Yeah, so I hope, do you still have your dog?
Yep. So he's about yes, 8 now. So yeah.
Well, dogs are wonderful.
Oh yeah.
As I said, I think before we started, I joked about changing the name of my business to Black Cat Wealth,
Yeah.
because we do not have a fence, and I've had to walk him over the glaciers or snowcrete, as we refer to it up here, and made me rethink. He's our first and only dog, and so I tried to do like some market studies of like Black Cat Wealth,
Yeah.
and that might even be worse than Bandit Wealth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Keep it with Black Dog.
Yeah. Well, and as troublesome as they can be, and I was asking because I have a lab
Oh,
who
geo.
she's 14. She's just about calmed down at 14. So I know what it's like to have a lab.
Oh, yes, all the things, and I have a lab that can't do all the physical things that they want to do, and so like trying to like tone down a lab
Yeah.
is intense.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So as we wrap up, are there one or two points that you would like to leave our audience with, in terms of, you know, either financial planning or surviving the military as a spouse, surviving transition as a spouse, thriving post-transition as a spouse?
It's a lot. Um, let's see. So I would say, for transition, uh, for finances, early and often have the discussions, work with a professional that can help you see things that you might not be seeing. Obviously, I lean very much into NQFPs and CFPs, who are knowledgeable about our lifestyle and what we face. Emotionally, no, you're not alone. Even if you feel like people aren't talking about it, it's hard for everybody. And if you start the conversation about how hard it is, suddenly people will be like, oh my gosh, it is so hard. I thought I was the only one that thought it was hard. And don't be afraid to look into resources, not only for like growing your business or your spouse's transition. If you need counseling to help with this, because again, like everything is happening at once. So seek that out. And also remember that you have value and take a chance on yourself, whether that means your own business, whether that means stepping your career up. But also know, like, if your family has discussed it and that's just not where it is right now, like that's fine too, right? There's not like one way to be successful in life, and there's not one way to optimize things. It really is very personal and situation dependent as to what kind of life you and your family want to craft. So you're not alone. Talk about finances, get support if you need it, and you're worthy. So bring that light to the world.
Love that. Love that.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Vanessa, for doing this. We really appreciate it. Some great insight that, yeah, we definitely have not had on the podcast before. So I think a lot of listeners will learn a lot from this. So again, really appreciate your time today talking with us.
Thank you guys so much for your time. Again, it was an honor to be here.
To get transcripts, show notes, or more information, go to operationretirementreadiness.com. Have a question or topic for the podcast? Send it to info@operationretirementreadiness.com. Find out more about Amy and Mike at their websites. Mike is the founder of Next Mission Financial Planning, LLC. He retired from the U.S. Air Force and has worked in the financial services sector since 2021. He is a certified financial planner, chartered financial consultant, and a certified college financial consultant. You can find out more about Mike at nextmissionfinancialplanning.com. Amy is the founder of Instar Financial Planning, LLC. She is retired from the U.S. Army and has worked in the financial services sector since 2019. She's a certified financial planner, a chartered federal employee benefits counselor, and a chartered retirement planning counselor. You can find out more about Amy at instarfp.com.